You know, people always talk about the moment you just know you've found your person. For me, that moment happened in the middle of a convenience store. It was pouring outside, and I'd been caught without an umbrella. I remember standing near the magazine rack, pretending to read something about celebrity diets I didn't care about, hoping the rain would stop. And then he walked in, tall, lean, hair damp from the drizzle, wearing that kind of half smile that makes you think, maybe he's about to tell you a secret. He didn't, though. He went straight to the counter, bought an umbrella, and then, before I could even blink, he handed it to me. "You look like you're about to turn into a popsicle," he'd said. His voice was warm, teasing. "Here, consider it a peace offering from the weather gods." I didn't know him. He didn't know me. But that was Leo, charming, confident, a little impulsive. And well, I was hooked from the start. Back then, I didn't know that sometimes the same hands that lift you up can also let you go. The first months were a blur of late-night calls, weekend picnics, and long drives with the windows down. Leo had this way of making life feel lighter, like everything could be an adventure if we just decided it was. He was ambitious, too, always talking about his plans to start his own business, how he'd make it big one day. I admired that. I wanted to believe in him. So when he needed help, emotional, financial, practical, I was there. I picked up extra shifts to help him pay for his first office space. I stayed up late to help him finish proposals. I became his cheerleader, his sounding board, his safe place, and maybe that's where I made my first mistake, giving so much of myself that I didn't notice how much he was taking. Maya. That was his ex's name. I heard it for the first time about 4 months into our relationship. We were at his place, curled up on the couch, watching some random movie neither of us was paying attention to. His phone buzzed, and I happened to see the name on the screen. He didn't answer, just put the phone face down and said, "Old friend." Nothing important, but something in his tone made me tuck that name away in the back of my mind. Over time, I learned more. Maya was the first love he never really got over, or so his friends liked to joke. She was glamorous in the way people are when they know how to turn every room into a stage. They'd been broken up for over a year before I met him, but apparently she still called sometimes, just to catch up. I told myself it didn't matter, that he'd chosen me. That was enough, or at least, it should have been. Looking back now, there were signs, tiny cracks in the glass. The way he'd go quiet after certain texts. How he never talked about why they broke up. How sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, he'd stare off like he was somewhere else entirely. But when you're in love, you learn to paint over cracks. To tell yourself that if you just love hard enough, the glass won't shatter. I didn't know then that the day it finally broke, I'd be lying in bed, burning up with a 104F fever, and he'd be across town, laughing with her. If you had asked me back then, I would have told you that Leo was the best thing that ever happened to me. Even on his worst days, he could make me laugh. He'd send me silly memes at AM just to see me smile in the morning. He'd show up outside my workplace with coffee because I was in the neighborhood, even though I knew his office was 40 minutes away. I guess that's how toxic love works. Sometimes it gives you just enough warmth to keep you from noticing the cold creeping in. The first real Maya moment happened on our 1-year anniversary. We had planned dinner at this little Italian restaurant we both loved, the kind of place with fairy lights strung up like stars, and a waiter who always remembered our order. I bought a new dress for the occasion, soft blue, his favorite color. I remember feeling giddy, rehearsing little things I wanted to say about how happy I was. He was late. At first, I brushed it off. Work ran over sometimes. He was ambitious, busy. But 30 minutes became 45, and my phone stayed silent. Just when I started to think something had happened, he walked in breathless, apologetic, flowers in hand. "I'm so sorry, Ella." Maya had. Well, she's going through a lot. She called me crying, and I couldn't just ignore it. But I'm here now. I remember forcing a smile, telling myself it was sweet that he cared about people, even people from his past. But somewhere deep inside, something twisted. I tried to push it down. After all, I was the one sitting across from him now. I was the one he came to, or at least, that's what I told myself to keep from asking the real question. Why was his first instinct to run to her instead of calling me? The months that followed were a strange mix of tenderness and unease. He'd bring me lunch at work, but then go quiet when I asked about his day. He'd hold my hand in public but turn his phone screen away when a certain notification popped up. One night, while he was in the shower, his phone lit up on the nightstand. I swear I didn't mean to look, but her name was there. Again, Maya. I miss the way things used to be. My heart stuttered. When he came back into the room, towel around his waist, I asked, "Do you still have feelings for her?" He looked at me like I'd just insulted him. "Ella, she's just a friend. I'm with you." Why would you even ask that? I wanted to believe him so badly that I let his anger wash over me like I was the one in the wrong. I apologized. Sometimes. I wonder if he even realized how much I was bending myself to keep the peace. How many times I swallowed my own needs to make space for his. By the time my second birthday with him came around, I knew one thing for sure. Maya was still in the picture, whether I liked it or not. But I didn't know that she would eventually take my place entirely. Not in his heart, in his arms. And the night it happened, my body would be burning up, begging for air, my skin clammy, my head spinning, and he would be laughing with her. It started as a headache, just a dull throb at the base of my skull after a long day at work. I figured I'd sleep it off. But by the time I got home, my body felt heavy, like every step was dragging me through wet sand. I collapsed onto the couch, still in my work clothes, staring at the blinking light of the microwave clock. 7:40, 8 p.m. Leo had said he might stop by after a meeting. I remember thinking, good, I need him tonight. By 8:30, the chills started. My teeth chattered so hard my jaw ached, and no matter how many blankets I pulled over myself, I couldn't get warm. My skin burned, though the kind of fever heat that makes your vision blur. I checked my phone. No messages. At 9:12 p.m. I called him. "Hey," I croaked when he picked up. My voice didn't even sound like mine. I think I'm really sick. Can you come over?" He hesitated just for a second, but I heard it. I'm with a friend right now." "What's going on?" "I have a fever. I can barely stand." "Please, Leo." There was another pause, then a sigh. "Okay, I'll see if I can get away in a bit." By 10, I was curled up on the bed, sweating through my shirt. I tried to sip some water, but it felt like swallowing glass. I kept glancing at the door, expecting him to walk in any second. At 10:27 p.m., my phone buzzed. Relief washed over me until I saw the message. "Leo, I'm stuck here a little longer. Don't wait up. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding not from the fever, but from something sharper, something colder. I opened Instagram to distract myself. That's when I saw it. A tagged story. Maya's account, she and Leo, sitting across from each other at a candlelit table. Her caption read, "Some things never change." I blinked, my fevered mind struggling to process it. My thumb shook as I replayed the video over and over. He was smiling, not the polite kind he gave strangers, but the real, crinkled eyes. Smile I thought was mine. The room spun, not just from the sickness, but from the realization sinking into my bones. He wasn't coming. Not tonight. Not for me. I curled into myself, clutching my phone like it might warm me. The heat in my body was unbearable, but the emptiness in my chest was worse. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a whisper started. This is what loving him feels like. By midnight, I was drenched in sweat. The sheets clung to me like they fused with my skin, and every inch of me ached. My head felt like it was full of boiling water, sloshing and pressing against my skull. I tried to stand to get medicine, maybe make tea, but the moment I swung my legs off the bed, the floor tilted, my knees buckled, and I collapsed against the nightstand, sending my glass of water shattering to the floor. I didn't even have the strength to clean it up. I called him again. 1 ring, 2, 3, voicemail. My voice shook as I left the message. Leo, I'm really sick. Please, I need you. No call back. Around 1:15 a.m., I heard laughter outside my window. Not from him, just neighbors stumbling home from a night out, but it made me think of the video again. That candlelight, the way his hand was resting so close to hers, the softness in his gaze. I wondered if she knew I existed. If she did she care? I pictured them leaving the restaurant together, her hand on his arm, maybe leaning into him for warmth. And then I imagined him walking her to her door, telling her she looked beautiful. Maybe she'd say she missed him. Maybe he'd say it back. The images burned worse than the fever. At 2:04 a.m., my phone buzzed. I scrambled for it, heart pounding. It was a text from Leo. Leo, sorry, just got home. You okay? I stared at the words. You okay? I could barely breathe. My skin was on fire, and my head felt like it was splitting in two. And all he had to say was, "You okay?" My thumb hovered over the screen. I wanted to scream, to tell him exactly how not okay I was, to ask him why he chose her over me. But my body was too tired, and my heart was already starting to shut down. So I just typed me. Yeah, fine. It was the first lie of the night, and it wouldn't be the last. That was the moment, lying in the dark, shivering and sweating, that I knew something between us had cracked beyond repair. I didn't know yet that, in the days to come, that crack would split wide open, that his apologies would feel hollow, that I would start to imagine a life without him, and realize it might be better. But that night, all I could do was close my eyes and pray for morning. When I woke up, the sun was already high in the sky, painting my room in that soft, golden light that usually makes mornings feel safe. But there was no safety in my body. My muscles felt like they'd been wrung out, and my throat burned with every swallow. The fever hadn't broken. If anything, it had settled in deeper, like it was determined to claim me for a few more days. At 10:13 a.m., my doorbell rang. I knew it was him before I even got out of bed. I shuffled to the door, every step heavy, and opened it to find Leo standing there, holding a paper bag with what I assumed was soup. He looked freshly showered, hair neatly styled, like he'd had a full night's rest. "Hey," he said, stepping inside without waiting for me to invite him. "You look awful." I didn't have the energy to joke back. "Yeah, well, I feel worse." He set the bag down on the counter and pulled out a container of chicken noodle soup and a bottle of orange juice. "I figured you could use this." For a moment, I almost thanked him. Almost. But then I remembered the Instagram video. The warmth that could have risen in my chest turned into something sharp instead. "Where were you last night?" I asked. My voice was hoarse but steady. He didn't meet my eyes. "I told you, I was with a friend. Maya. She's going through a rough time." I couldn't just leave. I let out a bitter laugh that scraped my throat. "You couldn't just leave her, but you could leave me burning up with a fever alone." His jaw tightened. "Lia, it's not that simple." "Yes, it is," I said. "You made a choice." For the first time in a long while, I didn't cry in front of him. I didn't plead. I just stood there, staring at this man I thought I knew, realizing I didn't recognize him anymore. He sighed, like he was the one who was tired. "I'm sorry you feel that way." That sentence, "I'm sorry you feel that way," hit harder than any outright insult could have. It wasn't an apology. It was a dismissal. He stayed for maybe 20 minutes, making small talk about work and how he'd make it up to me. I nodded at the right times but felt nothing. Just a numbness spreading where love used to be. When he left, the apartment felt even colder than it had the night before, and somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't the kind of thing you could fix with soup. The thing about breaking isn't that it happens all at once. Sometimes it's slow, so slow you barely notice until the pieces are already scattered. After that night, I started moving differently. I still answered Leo's calls, still laughed at his jokes, still met him for dinner. But I stopped giving him the parts of me that were soft. I didn't tell him when I had a bad day. I didn't reach for his hand without thinking. I didn't wait up for him anymore. It wasn't revenge. It was self-preservation. A week after the fever night, I was finally feeling strong enough to get back to work. I'd been catching up on emails when my phone buzzed with a notification from a mutual friends group chat. A photo. Lil and Maya. This time at a gallery opening. The caption read, "Reunited and it feels so good," followed by a row of laughing emojis. I stared at the image. He was leaning in toward her, smiling, his arm just close enough that it could brush hers. She was laughing, head tilted toward him like the rest of the room didn't exist. Something inside me went very still. When he called that night, I didn't bring it up. I didn't ask why he hadn't told me where he was. Instead, I listened to him talk about work, nodding even though he couldn't see me. He must have sensed it, this quiet shift, because halfway through, he said, "You've been distant lately. Is something wrong?" I wanted to tell him everything, to lay it all out like evidence in a trial. The Instagram video, the unanswered calls, the gallery photo. But I knew how it would go. He'd twist it, turn it back on me, make me feel like I was imagining things. So I just said, "I've been tired." He softened immediately, his voice slipping into that sweet tone that used to melt me. "I don't want us to drift apart. Lia, you're the most important person in my life." I almost laughed, because if that was true, I wouldn't be sitting there wondering if I'd been demoted without notice. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the first day we met. How he'd handed me that umbrella and made me believe he was someone who would always show up. Now, I wasn't sure if he'd even notice if I disappeared. And that was the first time I thought not just idly, but seriously about what it would mean to leave him. Leo wasn't stupid. He might have been careless with my heart, but he wasn't clueless. He could feel me slipping away, and it made him restless. He started texting more often. Random good morning messages, surprise lunch drop-offs, calling just to hear my voice. Things he hadn't done in months. If I hadn't known better, I might have thought it was love. But it didn't feel like love. It felt like control. Like he was trying to reel me back in before I drifted too far. Then Maya called me. I almost didn't pick up. Her number was unfamiliar, but something in me knew. When I answered, her voice was smooth, almost cheerful. "Hi, Lia. I'm Maya. I'm guessing you know who I am?" My heart pounded. "Yeah, I know." She laughed softly, like we were sharing some private joke. "Good. Then you also know that Leo and I have been reconnecting." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I gripped the phone tighter, the words stinging my ears. "What do you want, Maya?" I asked finally. "Oh, nothing much," she said lightly. "Just thought you should know that whatever you think you have with him, it's not as solid as you believe. People always find their way back to where they belong." The audacity of it calling me in the middle of the day to stake her claim made my blood boil. But I forced my voice to stay calm. "Then I guess the question is, why are you calling me? If you're so sure about him, you wouldn't feel the need to warn me." That shut her up for a beat. Then she said, "Enjoy the time you have left, Lia," and hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. Not because I believed her, but because a part of me realized she might not be wrong. When Leo came over that evening acting like everything was fine, I didn't mention the call. I just watched him. The way he avoided certain topics. The way his eyes flickered when he got a text he didn't show me. And for the first time, instead of feeling hurt, I felt detached. Like I was studying a stranger wearing the face of someone I used to love. That night, I made a quiet promise to myself. If this was the game they wanted to play, I'd stop being the unknowing pawn. I didn't expect Leo to come to my place again, but the universe has a twisted sense of humor. It was a rainy afternoon. I was curled up on the couch, a blanket around me, reading messages from Sophia about our next store opening. My phone buzzed. It was Leo. "I need to talk to you." I stared at the screen for a good 30 seconds before replying. "We have nothing to talk about." 2 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, he was standing there drenched from the rain, hair plastered to his forehead, looking like he had just stepped out of some tragic romance drama. "Lia. Please," he said, voice hoarse. 5 minutes. I wanted to slam the door in his face. Instead, I let him in. Not because I wanted to hear him out, but because I wanted to end whatever lingering threads tied us together. He stood in my living room, dripping rainwater on the floor, holding something in his hand. A velvet box. I broke off the engagement, he blurted out. For a moment, my mind couldn't process the words. I blinked. "What?" "It's over with her," he said. I couldn't go through with it. I realized I've been running from the truth, from you. "Lia, I still love." "Stop," I cut him off. "Don't say it." He looked at me, confused, almost desperate. "Why not?" "Because it doesn't matter anymore," I said, my voice trembling not from weakness, but from holding back the flood of emotions I didn't want him to see. "You left me when I needed you most. You didn't just leave, you chose her." You made that decision with full clarity, Leo. And now, because she's not the fairy tale you imagined, you think you can come back. It's not like that, he insisted, stepping closer. I was wrong. I see that now. I stepped back, my hands tightening around the blanket draped over me. I'm not a second option. And I'm not your safety net when your choices blow up in your face. You made me believe I didn't matter, and I finally believe it enough to let you go. The silence between us was heavy. He looked like I'd just stabbed him, but I didn't care. You don't love me anymore, he whispered. I almost laughed. Leo, love isn't the problem. Respect is. Trust is. You destroyed those. And no matter how much I once loved you, I will never put myself back into the fire that almost burned me alive. He stood there, staring at me, rain still dripping from his jacket. Then, without another word, he set the velvet box on my coffee table and left. When the door clicked shut, I sank onto the couch, my heart pounding, not because I wanted him back, but because I realized, for the first time in years, I truly didn't, and it felt like freedom. But I had no idea the very next day, his ex would show up at my store, and she wasn't there to fight. She was there to confess. That night, I couldn't sleep. The glow from my bedside lamp illuminated the untouched glass of water, the untouched dinner, and the untouched pile of just let it go advice my heart kept ignoring. My mind kept replaying every scene: Leo laughing with Avor, Leo forgetting I was in the hospital, Leo's dismissive voice when I said I was hurt. My body was still weak from the fever, but my soul felt far weaker. It wasn't just the sickness, it was the realization that I was in a relationship where my well-being didn't even make the top 10 list of his priorities. Around midnight, I pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered over our chat. The blue check marks from earlier stared back at me, his last text still burned in my mind. You're making this bigger than it is. It was never just about the fever. It was about the years of little moments. Where I came last, I opened my notes app and started typing, not to send, not to post, just to see my feelings in black and white. I wrote everything. The first time he forgot my birthday dinner because of work drinks. The weekend he cancelled our trip to help Avor move. The countless hours I spent waiting for a love that never arrived in full. I didn't cry this time. I didn't throw things. I didn't scream into a pillow. I just sat there. And for the first time, I felt a strange, quiet kind of clarity. Bam. I had made a decision. I would walk away, not in a dramatic scene, not in a screaming match, but in the quiet way you leave a burning building, knowing you deserve to breathe again. The next morning, I texted him, Leo, I hope you and Avor are happy. I'm done being the second choice in my own relationship. Don't contact me. LA. No explanations. No begging him to understand. I expected him to show up at my door, to call me 100 times, to send long apologies. But the day passed in silence. My phone stayed cold and still. By evening, I realized the silence said more than any words could. He wasn't fighting for me because he never saw me as something to fight for. That night, I packed a bag and booked a week at a small Airbnb by the coast. I didn't tell anyone except Mia. I needed space, not just from Leo, but from the version of myself who had begged for scraps of affection. And as the train pulled away from the city the next morning, I pressed my forehead against the window, letting the blur of scenery match the blur of emotions inside me. But what I didn't know was that while I was heading toward the ocean, Leo was about to do something that would pull me right back into the storm. I thought getting away would give me the space I needed. The ocean breeze, the sound of crashing waves, and the soft light of distant lighthouses, they all whispered promises of healing and new beginnings. For a few days, I let myself believe I could forget him. Forget the fever, the lies, the nights spent waiting for a love that wasn't coming. But just as I was starting to breathe a little easier, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "LIA, it's Leo. Please hear me out." I stared at it for minutes. My thumb hovered over the screen, tempted, hesitant. But before I could decide, another message came through. I made a mistake. I was lost. Please let me explain. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Could he really mean it? Could the man who left me with a 104F fever for his ex actually want to make things right? I didn't respond. Then came a knock on my Airbnb door. My heart pounded. It was him, Leo, standing there with wet hair, rain dripping off his coat, eyes searching mine like he was trying to find the part of me that used to love him. "LIA," he said quietly, "I'm sorry. I was selfish. I hurt you. But I want to fix this if you'll let me." For a second, everything inside me wanted to say yes. To fall into his arms and pretend none of it ever happened. But then I remembered the fever, the nights alone, the calls unanswered, the Instagram stories, and I shook my head. "No, Leo. You made your choice. And it wasn't me." He looked crushed. "Please, just give me one chance. I'm done being your second choice." With that, I closed the door. That moment marked the beginning of my true healing, not because Leo begged for forgiveness, but because I finally stood up for myself. Because sometimes the hardest love story is the one where you learn to love yourself first. After closing the door on Leo that rainy afternoon, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. It was like stepping off a cliff and realizing the fall might be the beginning of flying. I spent the next few days walking along the shoreline, letting the waves wash away the heaviness that had been lodged in my chest for so long. Each salty breeze reminded me that life was bigger than pain, bigger than heartbreak. I started small. I cooked meals for myself without checking if he liked them. I binge-watched shows that he never cared for. I even signed up for a pottery class, something I'd wanted to try but always shelved because we didn't have time. With every small step, I felt a part of myself return, the part that had been buried under years of trying to be enough for someone who never truly saw me. And then there was Ethan. Ethan was my neighbor, a quiet presence in the apartment next door who always held the door open with a kind smile and offered a helping hand when I struggled with groceries. We started talking more than healed, first about silly things, about dreams and disappointments. I wasn't looking for love. I was just looking for kindness. But kindness, I realized, was the start of everything. One evening, as we shared coffee on my tiny balcony, watching the city lights twinkle, Ethan said something that stuck with me. "You deserve someone who sees you, LIA. Not just the good days, not just when it's convenient. Every day." His words weren't a fairy tale promise. They were a quiet truth, and for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The weeks passed gently, like the turning pages of a book I was finally ready to read. I wasn't defined by what Leo did or didn't do anymore. I was defined by the choices I made for myself, choosing peace over pain, love over loneliness, and above all, me over anyone who didn't see my worth. One afternoon, I found myself standing in front of a CAF, phone in hand, ready to call Ethan. My heart fluttered, not from fear, but from excitement, because this time I was opening a door, not closing one. Leo never reached out again. And that silence became my anthem, a reminder that sometimes the right goodbye is the one you don't have to say twice. I still carry the memory of that fevered night, the burning heat that nearly broke me. But I also carry the strength it gave me, the strength to walk away, to heal, and to love myself fiercely. So if you're listening and you're hurting because someone chose someone else over you, remember this. You are not less because of their choices. You are not broken because they couldn't stay. You are enough, more than enough, and sometimes the greatest love story you'll ever live is the one where you become your own hero. Thank you for listening to Lia's story. If it touched your heart, please like, subscribe and share, because everyone deserves to know they're not alone.